Retirement planning has more to do with planning for life than it does for money. Now, obviously, the money's tied in, but today I want to give you 5 non monetary benefits of having a comprehensive retirement plan. Thanks for tuning in. If we haven't met before, I'm Mike Potter, certified financial planner and owner of True Wealth Financial. I believe that retirement should be prosperous, enjoyable, and purposeful. But a lot of people struggle the path of navigating into retirement. And rightfully so, as money and certainly retirement is complex and confusing and challenging. Plus, it's all new to you. You've never done it before. This show is dedicated to helping Christians create and optimize their retirement plan so they can retire with confidence. Today, I want to talk about how a retirement plan can really enhance that confidence as you step into this new stage. So the first non-monetary benefit is that it starts to get stuff out of your head. Brains are good for thinking, but not the greatest for retaining or holding a thought. You ever try to hold a thought for like 5 or 10 minutes? Just think on one thing over and over again? I don't know about you, but what happens to me is all kinds of other things kind of pop in. They pop in, pop out, and as soon as I start thinking about something, I'll say, oh, did I remember to do this? Or, oh, I got to do that. Or, oh, don't forget this is coming up. Or, I really wanted to do that. And all these things kind of come in. And the same is true with the loops that we tell ourselves, right? Those things kind of come and go and they ebb and flow. And when you're not thinking about something, you're thinking about like, hey, what about this? And what about that? I remember when I first started coaching people and we would work on budgeting, there's always this mental fog, right? People didn't really know what their spending was, or they didn't know how much debt they would have. And so the idea is if we get it out of their head and on paper where you can see it, it's a lot easier to manage. It's a lot less stressful. Same thing with building balance sheets and retirement plans and all these other aspects too. When it's all in your head, it's all kind of cloudy and foggy and confusing. But when you get it out of your head and on paper or on a platform or on an app or whatever, right? It just makes you feel different. It takes kind of a little bit of the emotional angst, emotional stress off, right? Same idea of like when you're going on vacation, right? If you ever gone on vacation for maybe a week long or so, or 10 days, you're going to be gone for a while. You have all these things. Oh, I need to make sure that I do this and do that. And I want to bring this and I want to pack that. Well, if that's all in your head looping around, it's stressful. But if you make a list and you kind of get it out of your head, then you'll know, right? So for example, anytime we take a vacation, I always have my final list for the final morning, right? So my phone, my money clip, my backpack, I have this list of things because if I go to sleep the night before without writing down all the things that I need, I'm going to be stressing kind of all night about it. I'm not going to sleep. So I make a list of all the things, the last minute things I need to just double check, passport, tickets, et cetera, et cetera. And I get it out of my head and on paper. And then I can just go to bed at night and not worry about it because I know I have this list out there on the table that everything's going to be on. And so same idea with retirement planning, getting out of your head and on paper where you can see it, just relieves some of the emotional, mental fog, and it'll make you greatly feel better. So non-benefit number 2 is that once you get this information out of your head and kind of on paper, you can begin to process it and see it a little bit differently. They say that in the world, there's kind of 3 types of people that take information in 3 different ways, right? So some are audio. So some people process information best audibly. Most are visual. We're visual people. The more you see it, the better it is. And then there's kinesthetic people. Very few people are kind of the way they feel information. And so the nice thing about using, like, for example, software or financial planning software in this case, is it allows you to manipulate data where you can see it differently. And seeing it differently make you recognize things that you didn't have privy to before. Or seeing things differently might make you interpret it different or see it different or make you feel different about it. So for example, in Right Capital, the financial planning tool that we use in our practice here, there's a lot of different ways. You can have a balance sheet, for example, that's very static-like, kind of rows and columns. Or we have a blueprint model where you can kind of process it at a higher level of different assets or liabilities and things like that. Similar to laying out your goals. If you ever laid out your goals, you could just do it on paper where it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or again, in Right Capital, there's cards that we have that outlay the goals, or you can put them kind of in a rolling calendar perspective. Same thing with cash flows, seeing future cash flows. It can be in tables and rows and columns, or you can get a very nice Sankey visual, right? So having information presented to you differently allows you to see it, feel it, interpret it different. Some people just like facts and figures. Other people like bar charts. Other people like line charts. Other people like percentages, right? So the idea being that once you get the information on your head and on paper or in some other kind of platform, you can begin manipulating it, presenting it a little bit different, and you might actually see things differently than you would have otherwise. Number 3 benefit is that it might facilitate discussions, primarily with your spouse if you're married, but if you're not married, obviously you don't have a spouse, but it might facilitate conversations with siblings, with your children, with grandchildren, with coworkers, with neighbors, right? And just talking about money in a different way might open things up to you. I was recently talking to a couple and they were sharing with me how they've had some really, really good conversations over the last month or two about just about life and what they want the next 10 years to look like and what's the next stage of life going to look like. They were beginning to have conversations, deep conversations about their desires and some of their fears and some of their excitement and some of their apprehensions, right? And it was really a good means for them to start really beginning to reevaluate what's important to them individually, but also collectively for their marriage, but also for their family in whole. Right? And so there's a lot of things that they were having conversations about. But again, getting it on paper and then seeing it different is what started to enable those conversations. I recently heard about a different lady whose husband passed away. So I think her husband passed away at 62. They were both around 62. Her husband passed away, and then she ended up retiring a couple of years later. And they didn't get to do the things that they wanted to do initially, because he passed away. But after she retired, she began to do the things that they talked about, sort of in memory of him or as a memento to him. And she would actually go and do some of the things that they talked about, even though maybe she didn't want to do it, but it was something that her husband wanted to do. And so she was kind of doing it in honor of him. And so these are things where she wouldn't have had those experiences. And she was talking about how much she kind of really actually enjoyed them, even though she didn't think she would. But it had a deeper meaning to it because it was something that her and her husband kind of talked about. And so had they not had those conversations, she wouldn't have been aware to some of his dreams or goals or aspirations and things like that, and hadn't had those experiences. And so she just talked about how she was upstate in New York, seeing the fall leaves change. And again, something that she didn't really want to do or hadn't thought about doing maybe, but how she had a really, really good time. And it was because of the conversations that her and her spouse had, sadly, before he passed away and couldn't take advantage of them, but she still got to experience them. So you never know where some of these conversations, even these micro conversations that you have, might lend themselves to. The fourth non-monetary benefit that having a comprehensive retirement plan might facilitate is that it'll give clarity on the path ahead. Clarity on the path ahead. Now, I don't know about you, but every time I drive somewhere, especially where I don't know the place, I'm either using a GPS, the navigation in a car, or worst case scenario, Google Maps on my phone. So I like knowing where I'm going. I don't like just kind of figuring it out when I get there. And so I like knowing the path ahead, turns, red lights, all that kind of stuff, distances, where I'm going, things like that. And again, retirement is something that you've never done before. And so that creates a lot of stress because you don't know the path ahead. But when you begin to have a retirement plan, it'll begin to give some clarity as the path ahead. Generally speaking, one of two things are going to happen. Either one, you're going to find out that you're better than you thought, or number two, maybe that you're a little bit off course or behind. But either way, it'll benefit you. I remember for the first time about a year ago or so, I ended up doing some analysis on Mrs. Beautiful and I's Social Security benefits. Now, I've looked at these statements for many, many years. We used to get them in the mail. Now you can get them online, or you can just go to socialsecurity.gov and download it and look at it. And I'd always see kind of my earnings and the number in the top right, but I never took the time to actually kind of plug that in or do some analysis on it. Well, last year I sat down, I kind of plugged in all of our history, and I looked at what that would look like when we're 62, 65, 67 from a holistic perspective. And I realized that, man, we have a pretty good base, a pretty good foundation, really just from Social Security, that if we just keep maintaining, it'll provide a good foundation for us. And really with our investments that we've already made, if we just kind of, just keep them invested the way they are and they keep growing for the next 10, 15, 20 years or so, those two things alone, even if we don't do much else over the next 15 years, which we obviously will, but just the foundation that we have set now in we're 47. So technically Mrs. Beautiful is 46. I'm 47. In our late 40s, that foundation that if it just continues to go on the way it is, we'll be okay. And it took some of that stress off me really thinking about it. And so I never really kind of put it all together really from a Social Security perspective, looking at it the way I did. I normally would just kind of look at those benefit statements and say, okay, that's kind of good. We'll maybe have something in the future. But this starting putting it together really just helped me process it a little bit differently. And then my guess is the same might happen for you. Alternatively, the opposite could be true. You might look at some information and you might realize, hey, we're a little off course or a little bit behind. But here's the thing, at least then you're aware of it, right? I mean, imagine it again, if you're going on a trip and you get off course and you just keep going and you keep going and you want to go north, but you don't realize that you're going west and you just keep going, right? At some point, you're going to be pretty frustrated. Like, man, why didn't I recognize this sooner, right? They say ignorance is bliss, but ignorance won't help you get where you want to go. I mean, think about it. If you were off course or behind, would you rather figure that out when you're 50 or when you're 65? I'd like to know a little bit sooner so you can explore options of getting it on course. I just had a conversation recently with a couple in their late 60s, and they kind of expressed how they wish they would have started this and been more retirement focused in their 50s. That is the best time to really start honing in on this. Generally speaking, your kids are kind of grown or getting to the place where they're in college or wrapping up college. Your 50s is a decade where you historically make the most amount of money. You don't have as much financial pressure from day to day, and you can really begin honing in on this stuff. And so this is a great time to kind of assess where you are so you can see with clarity the path ahead that, again, either, hey, we're doing pretty good, we're on track, we just have to kind of stay the course, or we're a little behind, we're a little off course. Let's start making some adjustments now so that we're in a good position in 10 or 15 years. Hey, if you're finding this information helpful or valuable, please take a moment and hit the like button. It's a great way to let me know to do more shows like this. Plus, it's a great way to say thank you. So another benefit of having a retirement plan is it'll begin to start to answer questions. It'll start to answer questions. Am I retirement ready? That's kind of what you're trying to solve for. There's two primary answers that you're trying to look for when you're building out a retirement plan. Number one is, can I live the life that I want? Monetarily, can I live the life that I want? And number two, if I can, what are the chances of me running out of money? Right? So again, we use Right Capital as our financial planning software here. And once you kind of feed the information in, what that produces is at a high level, the one metric you're kind of looking at is a probability of success. What that essentially does is that runs a Monte Carlo simulation, essentially 1,000 trials projecting out to the future based upon all kinds of market conditions. Some that are representative of what we've had in the past, some are even worse than that, some are even better than that. And what it does is it kind of takes the aggregate of all those 1,000 trials and determines how many of them end up at the end of the plan, so end at life, with you still having money, even $1. in terms of your assets. And what you're trying to get is a feasible plan is over 70. Because if it's over 70, you have a lot of flexibility throughout retirement where you can still pull levers, make changes, make adjustments accordingly throughout there, right? So that's the way we kind of determine, can I live the life that I want and will I run out of money? Those are the two primary things you're trying to solve for. Everything else is kind of, optimization or enhancements or resilient tactics beyond that. That will let you know whether you're retirement ready. Now, answering that question really is only going to yield even more questions. That's just kind of the way it works, right? So once you get that, you're going to go, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? So then what brings me to really a bonus here, a sixth benefit is that of you can begin to kind of move the pieces on the board, right? Once you have a comprehensive plan, you can begin to say, well, what if this? And what if that? Can I retire earlier? What's the impact? Can I take Social Security earlier? Or what happens if I delay it? Now, the benefit of having that kind of single metric that you're kind of looking at is the idea that then you can begin to what if scenarios, right? So if you think about this as kind of a big chessboard, there's all these pieces that, on your side of the board that you can control. And there's things on the external side as well. Inflation, how markets do, how taxes are, right? Sickness, longevity, right? You only have so much control over the things that you can control. And there's other factors that you have to navigate through. So the thing is, what happens if I move this piece here? Let's see what happens. What if I move this piece here? See what happens, right? So there's a whole bunch of things that you can begin to what if about. And if you're focusing on, hey, what's the impact to that overall metric? That's the nice thing about it. There's so many details down below that you can get nuanced to death with. And so at a high level, focusing on that probability of success, what's the impact? If, hey, maybe I want to retire earlier, right? So if I change to retiring early, how does that help my overall plan? Again, focusing on that metric. Okay, now is that good or is that bad? Right? Same thing with like Social Security. We talked about that a little bit. So if I take Social Security earlier, does that enhance my plan? Or if I delay Social Security and I start it later, does that help my plan? And does it really even matter, right? If I have a good overall metric, maybe it's irrelevant. And so I can retire early by taking Social Security earlier, and I'm still have a good probability of success. It might mean something like changing your investment strategy, right? So could I potentially be a little more conservative, take a little bit risk off the table, not be as dependent upon future market returns? What's the impact of that to my overall plan? Same thing with Roth conversions, right? Roth conversions is a great way to take money that's pre-tax, right? In a pre-tax 401k or in a traditional IRA, that anytime you take out, you have to send a portion off to Uncle Sam, right? Your retirement accounts that are tax deferred, it's not all your money, right? Some of it's yours and about a quarter of it's Uncle Sam's. They just haven't received it yet. But the idea, if we can take money from there and get it to in a Roth bucket, that's what we call a Roth conversion, what's the impact to that of paying less taxes in the future, which means I have more money in my pocket, which means it can be invested, which might help my overall plan again over the scope of 30 years. So again, all these are pieces where you can put on the board or levers that you can pull and push and shape that will help your overall plan. But again, it doesn't happen until you get it out of your head, put it in a spot where you can visually see it, have conversations with other people about what want your retirement to be, start to answer the overall questions. Am I retirement ready? And then we can get to the pieces on the board. So today we talked about 5, really 6, mostly non-monetary benefits that you can have from having a retirement plan. If you're still with me and you're finding this information helpful and valuable, please consider subscribing. That way you'll be notified of future episodes. Imagine what it'll look like the day where you and your spouse can turn in your notice, hang up your proverbial boots, and confidently step into the next chapter of retirement with unity, with clarity, with excitement, and with peace. That is the true benefit of having a retirement plan. If you don't have a retirement plan, a good first step might be to engage in a True Wealth assessment. It's a financial checkup of sorts to determine how retirement ready you are. We'll help you get an understanding of where you stand holistically, give you access to right capital, and a one-pager of recommendations that you can use to improve your journey into retirement. If you already have a retirement plan, a good micro action might be this week to pull it out and have a little bit deeper conversation with somebody who would be impacted by that plan. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your children, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a friend. But go a little bit deeper in your desires of what you want and your fears that you want to avoid. Remember, retirement planning is more about planning for life than it is money. In your retirement plan, make your life the center and the focus, and have the money support it, vice the opposite. Hope this helps you on your path into a retirement that is prosperous, enjoyable, and purposeful. Thanks for watching and listening. Until next time, hope you have a great day. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this week's episode of the True Wealth Financial Show. I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Additionally, you can find more information on our website at www.truewealth.show. One final note, though, as we wrap up to today's show. While I hope the information was helpful, valuable, and insightful, it's really for information and educational purposes only. Prior to making any decisions or taking any actions, I'd strongly encourage you to talk to your legal, tax, estate, or financial advisor who's familiar with the unique circumstances of your particular personal situation. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, hope you have a great day.